Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Korman Productions, here to talk about This Is Us Season 4, Episode 18, titled Strangers Part 2, the season finale of Season 4. This video actually marks a rather important historical occasion for Korman Productions, in that it is the first ever video produced by a laptop and not my phone. The laptop came courtesy of Rob Schumacher, who is a customer that happens to be a friend of a person I went to school with, both of whom I see fairly regular at my job. This represents a huge turning point in Korman Productions and the quality of my videos, and a major step towards the eventual business side of Korman Productions that I eventually want to get to. It's also the reason why this very much delayed video was even more delayed, as I was trying to learn how to do this again on a computer. Anyway, moving on. As usual, this is not a spoiler-free video, so if you have not watched the episode to this point, which, if you're a fan of the show, what are you waiting for? I highly recommend you stop watching now and go watch the episode before coming back and watching the rest of this video. For discussion purposes, I feel it's important to talk about the first episode of this season, Strangers Part 1. Now, when that first episode aired, it was a kind of an odd viewing experience, because for the most part, we were not seeing our regular characters. We were not seeing the people that we wanted to see, the ones we've been viewing for up to 3 years at this point. We did have a Jack and Rebecca plotline, but other than that, we really didn't see our main characters, the big three. The Jack and Rebecca plotline once again went back to their early romance when Jack was meeting up with Rebecca's rich parents, played by Tim Matheson, who I know from The West Wing, but he's had a long storied acting career. He's been in plenty of things. And then there was Elizabeth Perkins as Rebecca's mom, who also has enjoyed a pretty fruitful career. I remember her mostly from Big, which is a movie from a long time ago with Tom Hanks. And then there was a show, Weeds, recently, where she played Celia. If this thread had been a one-off, and had only shown up in this episode, it would have worked perfectly fine with me. But this was an ongoing thing of putting Jack and Rebecca's early relationship in jeopardy, which at this point in the series to me is pointless, because we already know how the story ends. So they kept going with it, and I've been on the record as saying that I was not thrilled with this throughout the season. We don't need any more of these type of stories. We know how this story ends, and there is plenty of ground to cover within this series. Like, for instance, we have never actually seen how Rebecca and Miguel get together. So please, going forward, no more of this. Just stop with it already. We don't need to see Jack in every episode. I love Milo Ventimiglia as much as the next guy. He's done a fantastic job in this series. But we can start moving away from him and start showing some of the other ground that we have yet to cover. As far as the rest of that episode, we were asked to care suddenly about characters that we had yet to meet, without any help whatsoever from our regular characters. And I think that was a big ask, which is why, for the most part, it was a pretty mediocre television experience. One of the characters in it turned out to be Toby and Kate's adult son Jack. And in the last 5 minutes of the episode, it gets amazing as a lot of the pieces connect. So when I saw that the title of this episode was Strangers Part 2, I was a little leery. However, thankfully, the strangers aspect of this episode was relatively unintrusive. We see the characters that made up that episode, plus the first half of the season. Cassidy, played by Jennifer Morrison, Darnell, played by Omar Epps, and Deja's boyfriend in cameo appearances. And by the way, it is actually a crime that they didn't find some way to have Omar Epps and Jennifer Morrison, both House MD alum, not share the screen together. Next season, you guys have to put them in a scene together. I mean, presuming that those guys will be back, which I'm assuming at this point that they will be. Toby and Kate's son Jack has a thread in the future, and we've seen enough of him that we do have some investment in his life, and this actually presents the birth of his child. And for the record, I think this pretty much confirms that Toby and Kate are dead by this point in the future. I don't see a reason why they wouldn't be present for the birth of their grandchild if they were alive. Maybe eventually we'll discover that they were, trapped in traffic or something like that, but I just don't find myself believing that. So I think they are very much dead at this point. And there's speculation that the future scenes, before this timeline, that Kate's dead during that time because we have yet to see her. We've seen Toby, but not her. We spend a little time with a female character who turns out to be Jack's adopted sister, which we find out later in the episode is what they intend to do from this point on, is to adopt a child so that Jack can have a sibling. And then there's a thread involving this guy buying a horse that he takes home to his daughter, who turns out to be Madison's doctor when she finds out that she's pregnant with Kevin's child. Oh, by the way, Madison is the mother of Kevin's child that we see in the flash forward scene during the fall finale. And this would seem to suggest that Madison is the one that he's engaged to. However, and this is completely crazy to me, there are still quarters of the online fandom that are suggesting that either Cassidy or Sophie are going to be engaged to Kevin, even after this episode. And that means, despite having twins with Madison, he's going to find another girl to get engaged to. I think that's a bit much. I think you guys have to give it up. Madison is the one that he's going to be engaged to. Now, that doesn't mean that he's with her in the future scenes, but he's definitely with her in the flash forward scene that we saw in the fall finale. I really don't think that we need the scenes with the doctor prior to meeting Madison. I mean, I get it, that's part of what they were doing here in the strangers concept, but it really wasn't needed. Supposedly the creators are saying that the Madison's doctor will be an important character next season. That's all well and good, but still, we didn't need those scenes during this episode. Filling in any kind of background on him could have waited till next season. But all in all, the strangers concept did not really detract from the episode that much. Dr. K makes his glorious return to the series, played by Gerald McCraney. This is his 8th appearance in this series, and I'm pretty sure we haven't seen him since Jack's funeral in Season 2. It's the 1 year birthday for the big three. Jack still isn't getting any. He's not having his special strip dance because Rebecca refuses to be naked after having 3 children. They are having issues adapting to the loss of Kyle, and so they go and see Dr. K. Dr. K ends up giving them advice, basically about melding the tragic with the miracles, the good times with the bad times in life. And it's a good message. I'm just not entirely sure that this story fits within the narrative of this episode. On the other hand, I don't care, because hey, Dr. K's back! The main thread of this storyline takes place at the 1 year birthday party for Toby and Kate's son, Jack. The entire family is gathering for the party. I don't really have much to say about Toby and Kate in this episode, but it is nice to see them happy for a change, and it's a stark contrast for most of their season's arc, which I never really liked. Kevin is getting ready to go into a meeting, but first he calls Uncle Nicky, Jack's brother, and Nicky responds with a very gruff, "What?" which made me kind of laugh a little harder than it probably should have. In response, Kevin goes on a little bit of a rant, how Nicky could have answered the phone with, "Well, hey there, nephew Kevin, how are you doing?" And Nicky's response is to basically just give a softer "what?", which was kind of amusing to me. Kevin says that he's calling because he got the clothes that Nicky got for Jack's birthday, and perhaps he's also fishing for a congratulations on it being 1 year of being sober. Only it's not quite 1 year, because his 1 year anniversary is the next day. And Nicky says that he will congratulate him tomorrow. It was good to see Nicky again, because he's been sidelined for the back end of the season, as most of the characters that we spent the first half of the season were. And the scene itself is very good, showcasing Nicky's rather gruff exterior, which I believe Kevin sees through. And it is very evident that Nicky does care about Kevin, which is evident even more when we see him towards the tail end of the episode. We next cut to a Randall and Beth scene, which actually starts with Deja saying goodbye to her boyfriend because they're going to Jack's birthday party. Neither of these characters have really been featured in the back half of the season. They were sidelined, much like Nicky was. Beth ends up being the audience's voice, calling out Randall for his shady emotional blackmail tactics to get his mother Rebecca to do the clinical trial that he wanted her to do, that she initially had decided not to do, in favor of spending more time with the family and doing all the things that she had wanted to do. I had spent quite a bit of time in the last video on this series talking about why Randall's actions were completely terrible. And I gather from Beth saying this that we aren't necessarily, as the audience, expected to take Randall's side. At least not all of us. They do expect us to be critical of Randall's actions. We learn here that Rebecca is going to tell the rest of the family of her decision, keeping Randall out of it, at Jack's birthday party. It's pretty clear that Beth thinks there's eventually going to be a massive fight over the issue. And as usual, Beth isn't wrong. At the party, Randall looks uncomfortable and is avoiding eye contact with Kevin. Kevin reads this and eventually approaches him. he assumes that this is to do with the fight they had in New York, of course over Rebecca. And that's true, except there's more to it than that. We know what Kevin doesn't. We know what Randall did, and that's the real reason that he looks so uncomfortable. Kevin extends an olive branch and says that he knows Randall put a lot of thought into the clinical trial. He knows that he did an insane amount of research, but he feels that Rebecca staying with the family is what's best for her. Randall doesn't really respond to this, but he does congratulate Kevin on 1 year sobriety. And given this episode and the prior ones to it, I have to wonder a little bit if Randall was even being sincere here. I'm inclined to think he was being sincere, but there's a worm of doubt. Rebecca starts to make her announcement, and Beth basically nopes out of the scene in hilarious fashion. Oh, I have to go in the other room and get that thing that I forgot. I mean, that's not exactly how it plays, but essentially, that's how it is. Rebecca tells the family that she indeed has decided to do the clinical trial. And we see a shot of Miguel being supportive, and it really just kind of annoyed me a little bit, because was Miguel even involved in this conversation, or did Rebecca just decide to do it on her own and he just supported it? Unaware that Randall was basically the mastermind. Miguel, a lot of the time, is treated as an afterthought among the family. But even worse than that, he's treated as an afterthought with the writers of the show. And it bugs me to no end. Kevin and Kate are clearly caught off guard by the announcement, while Randall doesn't react very much at all. Because he already knows, but at the same time, I think he should have tried a little bit harder at acting like he didn't in this scene. Not that either Kate or Kevin seem to notice. Kevin does not look happy, but he basically says, you know, Mom, if this is what you want, then this is what we're doing. Now, I thought that Kevin was suspicious right off the bat, but nothing that happens after this seems to suggest that I'm right about that. The next time we see the big three, they are outside discussing their mom's decision. Kevin doesn't understand the sudden change of heart. He asks Randall if she said anything to him, and his response is something along the lines of, she probably just thought it was an investment in her future, which is a comment that both Kevin and Kate end up making fun of him for. It's a moment of levity that is probably going to be the last between the three of them for a while. If you don't have enough reasons to be aggravated with Randall, this scene provides you with a few more. Randall knows full well why Rebecca changed her mind, but he's not going to say so because he knows it's going to be a fight, and he doesn't want to have it. Now, we could look at this optimistically and assume that Randall will eventually confess. He just doesn't want to do it here because it's Jack's 1 year birthday party. I'm just not sure that I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Towards the end of the episode, Kevin and Rebecca have a conversation, which Kevin leads into what he wants to know, which is, why did she have the change of heart? Rebecca eventually comes up with a line that she just saw it as an investment in her future. And it should be noted that Beth has wandered into the scene at this point, and I think she knows where this is going. You can see it on her face. That line from Rebecca is what finally lets it all click into place for Kevin. He knows exactly what happened, though I must add that he never has the full picture of what took place. And if he did, he'd be even more angry. Kevin goes off to confront Randall, who's outside. Rebecca tries to stop the fight from happening, but Beth pretty much tells her that they should get out of the house. They should take the girls and leave. And this is the second time in this episode that Beth is more or less bailing on witnessing an argument. She knows that there's no stopping it. She knows Rebecca's not going to be able to cool it. The only thing that is left to do is to let it happen. But that doesn't mean that the kids need to be around to witness it. And here is where we get to the meat and potatoes of this episode. The moment we've been waiting pretty much the entire back half of the season to see. The confrontation between Randall and Kevin. Kevin goes outside and sees Randall being distracted by his phone, no doubt checking security camera footage on his phone from back at the house. And he asks, "What did you say to her?" Randall acts confused as to what Kevin is talking about. And Kevin comes back with, "Like hell you are. What did you say to Mom to convince her to go to the trial?" Again, Randall claims cluelessness. And this is more aggravating Weasley behavior from Randall. Kevin's like, don't do that. Just tell me the truth. Don't play stupid. Randall gives in and basically says he did what he had to do to get his mom the best possible care. Kevin, in anger, responds, "You couldn't do it. You couldn't let Mom side with me." And this is a weak start to the argument for Kevin. Assigning petty motivations to Randall's actions, which, despite all my criticisms of Randall, I know where he's coming from. I know he's coming from a good place. But his actions are not good. His actions are terrible. The way he goes about things is not right. But despite all that, he genuinely does think that this is what's best for his mother. Randall is pretty much right to be dismissive of this comment. It's basically, in times of stress, you will find yourself reverting back to old childhood roles. And that's what's going on here. Randall tries to walk away from the fight, but Kevin's not having it. He says, their mom was clear that whatever time she had left, she wanted to spend it with the family. Randall comes back with, and when the good times end, you guys are all going to wish that you fought for more. Randall, maybe by doing this trial you get more time. That is a possibility. But it's also possible that you are just robbing your mom of the time that she has left being lucid, of making memories with the family. There is no guarantee whatsoever that the trial will do anything, that the trial will give her any more significant time. And when you're having the condition that Rebecca is clearly having, 9 months is a long time. You could simply just be robbing her of that. I don't doubt the sincerity of Randall's beliefs here. I don't doubt his intentions. But this was very much his mom's call. This is not a black or white issue. It's not as simple as this will definitely help her. There are no guarantees here. You are very wrong on this issue, Randall. You were very wrong for what you did here. Randall once again tries to leave the fight. Kevin calls after him, "Hey, don't walk away." He wants to keep having the conversation. He wants to keep the argument going. Randall goes back into the house. Kevin follows. They are soon interrupted by Madison knocking on the door. Kevin is basically like, "Hey, now is not a good time." Randall takes the opportunity to basically run away. And I gotta say that Madison just has absolutely terrible timing. She's really here to talk to Kevin about the fact that she's pregnant with his child. And she's happening upon him in the middle of an argument with her brother, a pretty heated discussion. This is the definition of a terrible time, and Kevin even says so. Madison mentions the fact that she's here to talk to Kevin. And Kevin thinks it's about them sleeping together, and he doesn't see a reason to relitigate the whole thing. I was vulnerable, you were vulnerable, we slept together. End of story. But that's not what she's there to discuss at all. She lays it out there for him, and then tells him that it's somewhat of a miracle that she was able to get pregnant. So she's going to keep the child. She doesn't expect anything from him. He can be involved if he wants to be, but she's not asking for anything from him. And Kevin is pretty overwhelmed with this news. And he's basically pretty much on the verge of a panic attack. He tells her that he's not running away from the conversation, he just needs a minute. And he goes outside to basically, he doesn't vomit, but he looks very much like he wants to. Randall picks this time to come back into the scene. He wants to have the fight after all. He's not going to let it just rest. Randall says to him, "You think you know what's best for her because you took her to a movie theater, because you spent the day with her?" And Kevin fires back, "I think I know what's best for her because she told us." And Randall starts basically going, "How dare you, after 40 years, come waltzing in here?" And I have to question this a little bit. 40 years? They're not quite 40 yet, for starters. And I don't know, at best, he left when they were 18. I'm thinking a little bit older. So it hasn't been 40 years. At most, it's been 20 years. But Randall is angry, and sometimes angry people just say things. And this here, right here, is where the main argument takes place. A lot of people online in the fandom were basically like, "Oh my god, I can't believe Kevin is saying these things, what a jerk," and vice versa for Randall. Those guys are missing the point. You really can't judge them based on this argument. If we were to look at an argument that you had with either a family member, a really good friend, or even a significant other, I'm guaranteeing you wouldn't look very good. If we were all to take a look at that argument and listen into the things that you were saying, we might declare that you're a jerk. The fact of the matter is that when you're having a fight with someone that you're really close to, you say horrible, nasty things to each other. This ceases to be, after a little bit, anything other than a night fight. This is about the other side trying to hurt each other as much as they possibly can. Randall, when pushed, says to Kevin, "How dare you pretend to care about anything other than yourself?" Now, what's funny about this is Randall says a lot of things in the argument that were my initial impressions of Kevin. I thought he was shallow, self-involved, basically a tool. And I stated in the in the episode 1 video that I did of this series, I said that that's probably the impression that Kevin would want you to have of him. He doesn't want you to look any deeper. Because when you look deeper, you see pain. Pain from his father's death. Pain from the fact that he was never able to make up with him after their last fight. But if you look deeper, you will also see empathy. A lot of it. So this idea that Kevin doesn't care about anybody but himself is just wrong. Randall basically tries to flip this argument on its head. You don't want Mom to come to go to the trial because you want to spend more time with her. It's all about you. And no, Randall, it's not all about Kevin. Kevin makes his last reasonable point within this argument, because from here on out, it's all just straight up knifing each other. Kevin says that this is not about him. It's about Randall. It's about Randall wanting to save his mom. Randall comes back with, "You don't know what you're talking about." But yes, he does. This is what this is about, Randall. Randall says that Kevin has no idea what it is to take care of somebody. And Kevin's like, "Yeah, because I left and you stayed and played martyr." Which, okay, I guess that's still a reasonable point. Because in the end, that's what happened. Kevin went on to live his life, which he was totally entitled to do. Rebecca was perfectly capable of taking care of herself. She didn't need Randall to stay. And as I've said before, that is very much on Rebecca. Rebecca should not have let him think that she needed him to stay for her. Randall says that he stayed to take care of the family. And Kevin comes back with, "Well, you sure didn't do a good job taking care of Dad." Implying that if Kevin had been there, actually he does more than imply, he outright says that if he had been there, he would have walked through fire to save their dad. Now, honestly, at this point, I don't think Kevin believes what he's saying here. I think what he's saying this out of anger. At the time of the fire that claimed their father's life, Kevin was walking on crutches and was pretty severely injured. It is my belief that if Kevin were there the night of the fire, not only would he not have managed to save their dad, but Kevin likely would have perished in that fire. I have a tough time seeing him getting out with as injured as he was. But I don't believe Kevin believes this. I think he's just speaking completely out of anger. In New York, he specifically told Randall that he couldn't have saved Dad. And I believe that to be his true beliefs on the matter. And for the record, neither one of these two men is responsible for Jack's death. Jack's death is almost entirely on Jack. He's the one that decided to go back into the house to save Kate's dog, and then spent time gathering up photo albums and such. And in doing so, he inhaled too much smoke, which is what directly led to his death. Randall comes back with, "Well, we will never know, Kevin, because you weren't there, and he died ashamed of you." Youch. That's the kind of comment that only a sibling could get away with, that only a sibling could come up with. He knew exactly where to put that knife. And from here, almost the rest of the argument is all Randall. Randall tells him that that's what really gets Kevin. The shame that he felt for Kevin, and the pride he had for Randall. That he's not even chasing his dad's shadow, he's chasing Randall's. A very arrogant comment, by the way, but, you know. He tells Kevin that he will never be his dad, and he will never be Randall, because he doesn't know what it's truly like to devote himself to someone. He'll pretend, but it'll be just a performance. A tired performance. Just like all his performances. Randall basically just invalidated Kevin's entire existence. Right down to his profession and him as a man. And it very clearly hurt him deep. Which is why he makes his final comment. He says that he used to think that the worst day that ever happened to him was their father's death. But hand to God, the true worst day of his life was the day they brought Randall home. Interesting directorial choice here in that we don't really see Randall's expression at this point. He's far away from the camera, and our close-up is with Kevin, and we see that Kevin pretty much instantly regrets what he just said as Randall drives away. Whenever we see a reconciliation between these two, both of them need to apologize for the things that were said here. Both of them said really terrible things to each other. And I definitely want to see some sign that Randall views his brother in a better light than what has been suggested from this scene and from the past couple of episodes. And Randall, just so you know, you not only have to patch things up with Kevin, but you gotta do a little work with me. Because right now, you're not my favorite guy. It should be pointed out that Sterling K. Brown and Justin Hartley are absolutely fantastic in this scene. If I were them, I would both be using this as a submission for their Emmy. Kevin goes back inside to talk to Madison, and I'd like to believe that even without this argument, eventually Kevin would have gotten to this place. But I definitely think that the things that Randall said pushed him to get here sooner. Kevin tells Madison that he's going to be a part of this, that the love of his life will be his child, and Madison smiles. We cut to the far future. Kevin is just joining the party or whatever's going on here. Pretty much a goodbye to Rebecca, I'm guessing. We see him enter Rebecca's room. Randall's standing there. He puts a hand on Randall's shoulder, giving him support in this moment. So eventually, they do patch things up. A lot of people took this to mean that they don't reconcile until this point. I don't quite take it that way. I take the scene as kind of reassurance that eventually they will patch things up. And that, my friends, is the end of Season 4. I'm going to take a little break from this series, but eventually I'm going to do some rewatch episodes of the early parts of the series, starting with Episode 3. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel.